This is TWiT.
So, what is going on? I actually first became acquainted with this when our friend Mike Elgin wrote an article for a fast company. And I think this is what you're talking about, right, Greg? Why the public's love affair with Silicon Valley might be over. But you're referring to somebody else.
Yeah, I think this article is loosely based off something that's been discussed by Professor Scott Galloway. Now, he works for New York University. He's a tenured professor. He's a company called L2 Inc., and he has a pretty amazing YouTube channel. And one of the messages, and he also has a history of being right about this sort of stuff also, by the way. And his point is that the worm has turned. So for the past 10, 20 years, we've all said that, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, they're all doing amazing things. They're bringing humanity forward.
The four horsemen of the technology apocalypse.
That's right. But what's happening is we're now suddenly falling out of love with Facebook. We've got the Russian hacking scandal. We've got Uber having its license pulled in London. We've got Google suddenly, the do no evil starts to look like a bro boys club where women aren't accepted. James Damore and that sort of stuff. This whole surveillance thing. Look at the Equifax thing is a part of this. These so-called technology companies, we've seen the Procero juice, debacle. All these startups that are just pointless, tech nerds who thought that, tech nerds who probably could have used somebody with a liberal arts degree to tell them that they're pretty stupid, actually, for a while. And so what he's trying to say is that all of these companies are stupid. And what he's doing is backing this up with some interesting evidence. And his point is these people are destroying billions of dollars of market value. So companies like Kroger, for example, are sunk from $28 billion to $20 billion. These are the people who employ people. So Walmart actually employs like 50,000 employees in the States. Amazon does it with 10,000. So if you're a government and you're looking at the $64 billion in tax paid since 2008 from Walmart and the $1 billion paid in tax from Amazon, who do you start legislating for?
Yeah.
Right? If you're Apple in Europe and you're looking at the European Union coming after you for tax revenue and you're going, but we, and you've only paid $1 billion instead of $20 billion over the last 10 years. And then all of a sudden you say to the governments, but you should protect us. We need help. The governments are going like, you're not paying tax. You're not actually a citizen here. You're not paying enough money to participate in modern society. So here in the UK, you now have the UK government starting to get after Facebook and Google and Netflix and saying, if you don't start paying tax in this country, we are going to have to create tax laws specifically to get you.
How is this different than Ludditism? How is this different than the traditional fear of technology that government and other slow-moving incumbents have always had?
Look, there is an element of this in that the tech community is, as Greg has pointed out, we're building technologies like self-driving cars, like smarter systems, which are going to put enormous numbers of people out of work in the next decade or so. And there is no plan to deal with this. And if you talk to the technology, I mean, I've talked to...
I would blame politicians for that. They're the ones who are lying to people. Who was it? The Treasury Secretary? Somebody said, automation is not even... we're not worried about that. They're lying. They don't want people to know that this is coming. They don't want to have people retrain. They want to pretend that coal's coming back, that there's going to be jobs for you as a miner. That's a lie.
But
and
also,
it's not fair to people. So I don't. Government's more to blame than technology. Technology is going to solve these problems.
Well, no, technology is creating some of these problems.
But that's
if you speak to
humans
anybody
are creating these. This is called progress.
I've spoken to numerous self-driving car people working on self-driving cars.
Get rid of self-driving cars. What we need is more children in the factories making shoes.
None of them have even a clue as to how to deal with this, and they don't care because it's not their problem. And as Greg points out, particularly, and this is less so in this country, but certainly back in the UK, when it came out that Google had paid, what was it, Greg? It was something like
30 million.
Yeah, 30 million in tax.
On 8 billion in tax on 8 billion of revenue.
It just, you can't do that and expect to say, well, I'm a good citizen and you should protect me.
I can match every point on this list of negatives, and there are many, obviously, with positive points, things that technology has brought us, and our lifespan is longer.
Amazon has paid, since 2008, Amazon has paid $1 billion in tax to the U.S. government. And yet Amazon is totally dependent on roads, businesses, electricity, workers, healthcare.
And we should all be upset about that. So should they? Right. So is that just tax reform we need to?
So what we've seen is that technology companies
they're taking advantage, by the way, of loopholes created by the incumbent companies who all along haven't wanted to pay taxes and take advantage of that infrastructure. These are tax laws that are on the books. Google comes along. It's not Google's fault. They're not Apple's fault. They're taking advantage of tax laws that were created not by them, but by their predecessors.
Yeah, but they industrialized the abuse of those systems. So where before the systems weren't being abused at multi-billion-dollar scale, they're being done at a minor scale.
Like everything with technology, they're just better at it.
Yeah. But the flip side of this is that in the US, Amazon has actually got a competitive advantage over its by just choosing not to make a profit. You only pay tax when you make a profit. So if you build a business that doesn't make profit, you don't pay tax. So now all of a sudden, Amazon can outcompete Walmart because it doesn't have to carry that liability on its books.
Yeah, Microsoft in its last quarter paid a minus 8% tax rate. You know, because they managed to wipe off all the stuff from Nokia.
Mm-hmm. So the governments have a problem. They need the revenue to sustain the internal systems. I mean, in America in particular, there's not enough money to fund a police force that's going to keep society secure. The reason that the police force has been part of militarizing is because they're frightened because there's not enough of them. How would you feel if you were like, what is the policing ratio in the UK? I think it's 1 to 100,000, something like that. And in the US, it's even much, much smaller. If there was any sort of significant societal upheaval in the US, there's simply...
Oh, I'm sorry. This autoplay gets me every time.
So I think there's a whole bunch of things here. One is that they don't pay tax, or they're pursuing strategies which deliberately avoid paying tax and maximize growth. And at some point, Amazon, by never, ever paying any tax, is going to become so large and so dominant that the governments are just going to have to say it's a monopoly and break it up. That's the logical extension of this is if Apple continues to get any larger as a nation state, like a corporate nation state, the only way governments are going to be able to tax it or to control it is if they force it to break up as a monopoly. And what Professor Galloway is making the point is that Amazon and all of these companies can't continue as they are because they're just not paying enough, not contributing enough back to societies that they take from.
I think there's also...
He says we're barreling toward regulation.
Yes.
That's basically the message here is that governments are going to, their backbones are going to stiffen. You're going to get greater regulation.
Well,
what does that mean? Does that mean break up Amazon or just tax Amazon appropriately?
No, I think we're already seeing this in the European Union where they're coming up with tax plans and they're saying, right, we're going to tax you on revenue that you make in our country, not on profit, because that is a better way to do it. Because at the moment, you're licensing your technology off to people in Holland or in Ireland.
They can bury the revenue.
Yeah, you can bury it that way. So the European Union is saying, right, we're now, and they've moved astonishingly quickly on this in the last month or so, saying we're going to go after revenue.
Isn't there a risk though? I mean, do Amazon and Apple?
Is Amazon
going to
suddenly not going to sell in Europe? You know, I mean, it's never going to happen. They need customers, and they need the internet backbone and the
Wouldn't you submit that Europe needs them as much as they need Europe?
Europe's done okay for the last 2,000 years before Amazon. You know, I think we'll knock on.
I think it's terrifying. I think the idea of governments deciding, oh, these technology companies suck. They're not paying enough taxes. Let's get rid of them. We don't need them. That's terrifying. Which do you prefer? Which would you rather have? The governments we've got out there or the companies we've got out there? I think the companies are doing a hell of a lot better job.
Really? You think Uber is
not Uber, but Amazon, Microsoft. Maybe not Facebook. Facebook's suspect. Google.
So the point is that I think the usefulness of these companies has reached the limits of what they can achieve, and we now need to reevaluate where we are. So, for example, there's a law that's now enacted across the whole of the European Union called the GDPR, the General Protection Data Act.
Nightmare.
Which basically
it's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare for Facebook because they have to delete user data after 2 years. Mandated. Absolutely not unequivocal. So,
why?
No, Why is it
ridiculous?
It is an excessive burden on the business. It's ridiculous, and it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how technology works. I think.
No, it's actually quite a well-written piece of legislation. It's not perfect, and it won't be but what we do have is companies in Silicon Valley that go broke and pick up their data and sell it off to another company in the disposal.
You don't think there's a peril that they're doing this at their peril, that this will be so damaging to techno companies that it will set us back that it's going to.
You need
this is a recipe for a dark age.
I don't.
This is the dark ages saying, she's a witch, burn her.
Sorry, no one is saying no one is proposing putting Jeff Bezos up on a spike and burning his corpse. Although I can know some of his competitors who really quite like that. But I mean, at the same time, they've had a free reign for so long, and there's a certain arrogance creeping in, which is Tim Cook in Congress last year, for example. He was talking about, we had the Trump tax plan come out this week, and Trump said they would be doing a once-in-a-lifetime one-off tax break to allow the $2.5 trillion being stored outside the US to be brought back in, and they probably they'll do a special lower tax rate. The only problem is we did this in 2004 with the Home Loan Investment Act, and all that money just went directly to shareholders, apart from Dell, who built a very small factory in Texas.
Is your complaint that capitalism is failing?
No, I think politicians need to grow a pair and start making sure that everyone plays by the same rules. Yeah. If I went to the IRS and said, well, my outgoings were pretty bad this year, don't forget about the salary, I'm kind of made a bit of a loss, so just can you give me some money?
Do you feel that the Department of Justice prosecution of Microsoft in the late 90s helped our situation? Do you think it made things better?
I think it was a classic example of why the US situation was so bad, because at the end of the day, Microsoft got a slap on the wrist from the DOJ. The real impetus on Microsoft to move was the EU, which didn't take such a laissez-faire attitude. The DOJ settled with Microsoft for really a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, and I mean the answer is
but look what we got in the EU. We got the browser ballot.
And well, what's wrong with giving people the choice of their browser?
This insane cookie message that
I know
is
you hate that one.
Meaningless. We get crap from governments that don't understand technology. Now, I'm not going to disagree with you that the technologists are arrogant and that these companies are running roughshod, but I'm not convinced that any government, even the wonderful Margaret Vestager, knows what to do with these guys in a way that's going to be responsible and work.
But you got to have
I think the GDPR is going to end up being a nightmare.